Syria's civil war has escalated again. Rebel forces have seized territory in Aleppo in the north and are pushing their way south to another major city, Hama. Syrian ally Russia has carried out airstrikes in the region as the rebels journey towards their ultimate goal, the capital, Damascus. The conflict has been bubbling away for 13 years, leaving more than 300,000 people dead and driving nearly 6 million refugees from the country. To help explain the recent developments, we're very grateful, as always, to be joined by international relations expert Robert Patman. Professor Patman, thank you so much, as always, for your time this morning.
Morning, Jenny.
Morena, how significant are these attacks and why now?
I think they're a direct result of the fact that two key backers of the Assad dictatorship in Syria, that's Iran and Russia, have been weakened by first the conflict that's been going on between Israel and Hamas, and also Israel and Hezbollah. And in addition, somewhat removed from the Middle East, but still connected, has been the effects that Russia has been deeply ensnared in a conflict in Ukraine. And this meant that, as you rightly said in your introductory remarks, the Syrian civil war has been going on a long time, but it seemed to reach an equilibrium by the early 2020s, whereby the Assad dictatorship was firmly in control. But that control depended on the support of Iran and Russia, and both Iran and Russia have been weakened by the events we've seen during the last year.
Can we talk about the geopolitics in the Middle East, and how does this particular attack, escalates the impacts of the Middle East and the geopolitics that are happening?
Well, it does. It means, unfortunately, the long-suffering people in Syria, there's going to be more internal displacement. And we are witnessing potentially a dramatic development. The regime in Damascus seems to have been caught very much by surprise. It's quite clear that this united coalition of rebels, they don't share too much except opposition to Assad's dictatorship. And so you've got rebels linked with the United States teaming up with rebels that originally had links with Al-Qaeda. Amongst other groups. So in short, it's a coalition of rebels. They are making quite strong progress. They don't have much air capability, and there are signs that the Assad regime is pushing back with the help of the Russians, but that help may be much more limited than in the past. And it's a very fluid situation. And what we've learned from other civil war situations is that things can change quite dramatically, quite quickly. And this is what's happening. Second city fell to the rebels with very little resistance from the regime. So they're beginning to capture really impressive weaponry from the Assad regime. So it's very difficult to predict in the near term, but it's certainly, we can't rule out the prospect that the Assad regime is in deep trouble. And of course, that will have reverberations for both Iran and Russia.
Yeah, can we, Iran and Russia, but what about further than that? How could the resurgence of this rebel activity, affect global security, but also you talked about refugee movements as well. How does it impact both those things?
Well, it makes both worse, to put it in a nutshell. But I think the nightmare scenario when the Israeli-Hamas conflict began to unfold last year in October was that we would have a regional-wide war. And this is what seems to be happening now on multi-fronts. It's easy to think of the Middle East as just being a conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, but it's not. It's a multi-sided tensions in the Middle East. And it's very bad news for many countries in terms of global security, not least our own. We have a number of people in Syria, more than 1,300 people of Syrian origin in New Zealand, who will be very worried about family members in the Middle East. We also get about 20% of our energy from the Middle East region. So a regional conflict in Middle East certainly has implications for our energy acquisition. And thirdly, and most importantly, New Zealand, like most countries in the world, most middle powers and most small countries, depends on what's called the international rule of law. And this is being seriously eroded. What does that mean in practical terms? Well, New Zealand trades with more than 100 countries around the world. We need those rules in order to go about our business and so that our exporters can go about their business peacefully. So this regional conflict has global ramifications, and New Zealand is an example of that. It's geographically a long way from the centre of the action, but will be affected by what's happening.
Professor Robert Patman, International Relations expert, so good to have you on the program. Really appreciate your time as always. Thank you.
Thank you.